Hey there, Blowhard fans, Rebecca Hadlock here. And today's Blow Your Mind update is on PPV fan performance potential. Specifically, airstream size, momentum, and entrainment within the airstream. Now, today's video is a bit longer, but stay with me as I promise you it will be well worth your time. So here's what I need you to know right off the bat. The very best PPV performance you can have is from a huge fan with huge power, because it offers a big airstream momentum, and big entrainment to pressurize and ventilate. But battery-operated PPV fans are built smaller for taking up less space on apparatus and for easy maneuverability. A small fan gives a small airstream, which means that airstream needs to do a little magic for optimal performance. Now, not all PPV fans are designed the same, perform the same, or even have the same airflow type. So understanding how your fan works and what its performance potential is will help you accomplish your goals: to pressurize, to ventilate, or even both. Now, I'm breaking up this video into the three primary systems of PPV ventilation. System 1 is the fan itself, System 2 is the airstream it generates, and System 3 is the structure. We will look at the variables of each system to understand how they influence the function and performance of the fan. So System 1, the fan itself. The two very most important components of fan performance are its airstream size and its power. Now, the way a PPV fan works is that it uses that power to accelerate air into the airstream. Now, based on the airstream size and the amount of power applied, a fan generates a certain amount of momentum in the airstream. So airstream size and its power equals momentum. The amount of momentum a fan can induce into the airstream defines the performance potential of that airstream. So the bigger the airstream and the more power you can put into it gives you higher momentum and better performance. For example, a small fan that produces a small airstream and a small amount of power applied to it gives you low performance because it's limited in the amount of momentum it can induce into that airstream. And the opposite, a big fan that produces a big airstream and a large amount of power applied to it gives you high performance. Now, don't get me wrong. Most PPV fans out there today on the market are either large with a limited amount of power or they are small with a big amount of power. But both are limited in performance. PPV fans are firefighting tools, and Blowhard believes that they should be designed and optimized for that performance. For today, we're focusing on the fan's performance potential within any airstream. So how do we measure a fan's airstream potential? Its ability to do the work? Well, a direct measurement of the momentum in an airstream is called thrust. Thrust, not CFM, is the most accurate method of measurement to determine the performance potential of any fan. Now, you've heard the saying, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, thrust gives a precise measurement of the airstream momentum because it is the equal and opposite reaction to the momentum the fan has induced into that airstream. Thrust measures momentum, and it's thrust that measures your fan's performance. But I'll get into thrust in a minute. So to recap, the fan itself is the first component in PPV performance, and it creates momentum in the airstream in response to the fan's airstream size and its power. There's a thrust reaction against the fan in direct response to the momentum induced into the airstream. So system number 2, the airstream. Now, historically, CFM, or volumetric airflow, measured in cubic feet per minute, has been used to gauge a fan's performance. And CFM is a key component of performance, but it isn't everything. You've got to factor in that airstream's velocity or speed to truly define a fan's performance. You see, airstream velocity is actually airstream pressure. And this combination of CFM and pressure together are the building blocks of momentum and thrust. And these are the true performance metrics of an Airstream. So let's dig in. Remember how we talked about how battery-operated PPV fans should be small in size to reduce storage requirements on apparatus, as well as provide easy portability for reaching more places quickly. However, because of their small size, that Airstream is also small and is in a compressed high-pressure state. But that small compressed state is not an effective usable form when high flow is needed to ventilate a building. In order to get it into a usable high flow form, that Airstream has to be able to convert into high flow or high CFM state. It's got a job to do, and if it can't do it, it won't perform optimally, because the state of that Airstream will define how airflow works within that structure. So let's break it all down. What is the job that the Airstream has to do? Well, it's got to increase in CFM by entraining air, which means that as it travels, it pulls Airstream into itself from the surrounding environment. So the Airstream actually changes state as it travels. And the first state is right here where it exits the fan. And the second one is anywhere downstream after it's grown. Now remember system number one, the fan itself. It created momentum from its Airstream size and power. For system number two, after it's left the fan, it's the combination of CFM and pressure that makes up the Airstream momentum. So you can't gauge a fan's performance simply on a CFM number, because you can have a fan that has high CFM and no pressure. You've got to factor in both to know its momentum. And that's the fan's true performance. And we can directly measure momentum by its opposite reaction, which is thrust. Momentum and thrust are the heart and soul of PPV performance. Fans which generate high momentum Airstreams will be capable of entraining more air to generate higher CFM. But more importantly, will maintain that higher pressure when it gets to its expanded state. So let's look at those two Airstream momentum states. Remember, state number one was right here when it exited the fan. And at this point, it hasn't entrained any air yet. It hasn't pulled any air in. So it's in that tightly condensed, tightly compressed state and has high pressure. So momentum state number one is high pressure, low CFM. Now momentum two was anywhere down the Airstream. By this time, it's traveled, it's entraining air, it's grown bigger. So it's actually a low pressure, high CFM state. Now remember we said that the airflow has to convert to a high flow state in order to get to high CFM? Well, it's the effective and efficient entrainment that will get it to transition. And remember, what's important is that an Airstream with high momentum or CFM and pressure will maintain that pressure when it gets to that expanded state, which now means it has increased potential to do the work. Now, it's important to note that different fan designs will produce Airstreams with higher or lower rates of entrainment. And some fans will have limited entrainment, like the straight jet, because it hasn't expanded by the time it gets to the door. And some utilize modes of entrainment like the cone, which has overexpanded and reduces the pressure in the Airstream. So be sure to watch our short video on the blowhard high flow expansion jet stream. So to recap, system number two of positive pressure fan ventilation performance is the Airstream. The two most primary factors are momentum and entrainment. Momentum is the driving force within the Airstream, and entrainment allows it to transition to different CFM and pressure states. And finally, system number three of PPV performance potential is the structure. Now, every structure and situation are different. Doors are different sizes, buildings are different sizes, and so the pressure and CFM requirements are also going to be different. And in order to generate the best outcome and maximize fan performance relative to the structure, it's important to understand those situations and to have both the proper fan and proper fan placement? Are you needing to pressurize, to ventilate, or both? Now, a large part of performance is the fan's ability to seal the air into the structure with its airstream. And this is accomplished by expanding that airstream to match the size of the door as much as possible to limit the amount of air that can escape. And when using a fan to pressurize or ventilate a structure, you have to also take into account both the structure inlet and outlet openings, and choose that correct airstream state that we discussed earlier. So momentum state number 1, that condensed high-speed low CFM, is used with the fan closer to the door when high pressure is needed. And to increase pressure in the structure, the outlet openings would need to be limited. And in this case, you would also need an air curtain to contain the pressure in the building. An example of high pressure scenarios are when needing to overpressure a region of a building to prevent smoke from entering and to provide an escape route for victims. Now, for momentum state number 2, that expanded high CFM is most commonly used and best practiced with the fan set back slightly from the door to entrain more air and generate high volumetric flow or high CFM. And to increase flow in the structure, the outlet openings would need to be increased. And examples of this scenario requiring high flow, high CFM are clearing smoke for visibility and providing fresh air and to cool down a structure. Now, some circumstances will require both pressurizing and high flow, and these cases would require a bigger fan with high power for extreme performance. And this scenario, requiring high pressure and high flow, are clearing smoke for visibility in larger and taller structures with restricted exit points, and for PPA attack. So to recap all of this information, fans with larger airstreams and high power will produce high momentum in the airstreams. Airstreams can utilize either their high pressure state or leverage the entrainment process to expand into a high volumetric, high CFM state. And your PPV ventilation performance will be highly influenced by your fan size, its power, its entrainment ability, how you set up your fan, and the configuration of the structure. Now that was a lot of information, but still just skim the surface of PPV fan performance. And we'll actually be getting into the finer details and breaking these concepts down even more for you. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and reach out if you have any questions or you want more information or clarification. And as always, take care and stay safe.